If you're working for a startup, I'm going to go ahead and assume that if you had more resources, you'd probably have more sellers. So you're always looking for ways to scale and amplify your reach.
Welcome to Revenue Insights. We're joined by revenue leaders from some of the highest growth companies. Together, we explore how they built their revenue teams, the journeys they've been on, and the lessons they've learned along the way. Revenue Insights is brought to you by Ebsta. We're an AI-first revenue intelligence platform designed to help you close more deals, retain more customers, and forecast better. Enjoy the podcast.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of the Revenue Insights podcast. I'm thrilled to have Alex Rich with us, the Vice President of Sales of North America at GitGuardian. With his vast experience in sales leadership and strategic alliances, Alex has played an integral role in scaling businesses in the cybersecurity space. Having worked with top-tier companies and led sales teams through both direct and channel-driven strategies, Alex is here today to share his expertise on harnessing the power of channel ecosystems and how partnerships can drive growth in a highly competitive market. Welcome to the show, Alex.
Thank you, Guy. Excited to be here.
Alex, it's great to have you on the show. Let's start with a bit about your background. Can you share with us how you made the transition from your earlier roles to now leading sales at GitGuardian and what attracted you to the company?
Sure. So I won't bore you with all the details, so we're not going to start from the beginning. I think we could probably start somewhere around the middle. I was at a company called Booker. It was my first foray into the SaaS world. The job at Booker was a technical program management one. So ironically, it didn't have anything to do with customers or direct revenue. It was really focused on the product. But I think what was really important for me about that role and what has helped me in my subsequent endeavors is reinforcement of just how important deep knowledge of both the product and the customer is for any type of selling role, and subsequently how important it is for sales to serve as a funnel or a source of product feedback for the product and technical teams, right? Too often do I see a rep on a call with a customer, a couple features, a couple capabilities are cited that are missing. That information goes into a vacuum. It never finds its way to the teams that build it. So I think what I really enjoyed about that experience was understanding the importance of that funnel and the collaboration between those functions. So from Booker, I went on to a company called Sisense, came in as a customer success manager. This was the first revenue driven or customer facing role for me. Sisense, like a lot of CSM organizations, had the dual mandate of being both focused on retention and upsell cross-sell. So got to learn how to support a customer, but also started to essentially figure out how the sale process worked as well, right?
So that's fascinating, Alex. So you started in, you actually didn't come from a sales background. You were more from a product background. And then you went on from there to Sisense, is that right?
Yeah. So at Sisense, I took the CSM role, focusing at the time on some strategic accounts, and it was a bit of a verticalized approach as well. So I was doing a lot in manufacturing and automotive as well. And yeah, Sisense was amazing because it was kind of my first step into sales. Now, granted, I was there as a CSM, but that role had the dual mandate of both renewal and cross-sell upsell. So in conversations with these customers, I got to be the individual who started to develop or plant the seed for the need for the upsell or the cross-sell, or if there was something on the table off the bat, start to really qualify and quantify it, and eventually loop a sales rep in. But I started to get a little frustrated that I had to loop the sales rep in because I wanted to be doing the selling as well. And I think that's when I started to realize that customer success is an amazing role, it's an amazing experience. But for me, the sales leadership track was probably the more appropriate one. So spent a little bit more time at Sisense, again, still in a CS role, but made the jump over to security scorecard. Initially landing as a director of CSM there, got to the company when we were pretty early stage. So around 100 people, sub 10 million in revenue. We had very little processes built out as far as the CSM function went. And I'm talking about the basics, like how do we onboard a customer? What does an EBR look like? What are the intent data that we monitor to determine if the customer is healthy or not? I think the CSM role there, and the same can be said about the CSM role at Sisense. For me, it gave me the ability to truly understand the customer pain point, which subsequently gave me the ability to engage in a practitioner level conversation. And I think whenever you're selling anything, credibility is everything, right? Being able to demonstrate to the end user, to the customer, that you're not just trying to sell them a widget, you actually understand what they're going through at a deep enough level to connect the dots between what we can do and how we can help them. So, yeah, the CS experience, both at SizeSense and at Security Scorecard, were critical. And I think going to Security Scorecard specifically, that CSM experience was really the foundation that let me evolve my career in the sales direction.
So we started in product, we're now in success. So take us through that. How did you end up in sales? Or sales leadership?
Yeah, it's an interesting story, right? So, if you follow my trajectory, you'll notice that I went from CS to sales leadership, but never was an individual contributor on the sales side, which is probably not the normal course. Basically, what had happened was it was about a year and a half into my tenure at Security Scorecard. And at the time, our sales teams were bifurcated into two functions. We had the inside team, or now we call it commercial, that was selling to the lower end of the customer segment. We drew the line at the time at $1 billion in revenue and below. And then you have the enterprise team. So our inside team was struggling. And I got a call from my CEO about a year and a half into the role at Security Scorecard. And without sharing all the details, he wanted me to take a crack at leading this team because he thought a big part of what was preventing that team from being successful is kind of what I was touching on earlier. We didn't have enough credibility with the customer to have the practitioner level conversation. And his view was that my knowledge of the product, the customer use case, and the pain point, if we found a way to productize that and weave that into the pitch and talk track and approach of the sales rep, we'd be seeing more success. And I think that is definitely part of why we saw success. We were able to turn that team around in the span of a quarter from, probably about 70% attainment to 112 in that first quarter. So that was an exciting milestone. Yes.
You found your home.
I think so. And it was so much more fun for me too, right? Like, I think the best way to kind of measure if a role makes sense for you, really simple way, is when you sit down in the morning, are you looking at the clock? Are you surprised when it's 4:00? Or are you thankful and that it's 4:00 and wondering why it's not 5:00? Once I got into sales, time is flying by. And that's kind of when I knew this was the right path for me.
Oh, I love that. I think that's a great takeaway. So if you're not enjoying the role, then maybe you're not in the right one. So I think that's an interesting data point.
Especially in sales, right? Because customers will see right through it, right? In the same way that if you don't genuinely believe in your solution, they're going to see right through it as well. So that's why I think enjoyment in the role, understanding and appreciation for your product, and not service level understanding. I don't want to hear people who can just recite the elevator pitch and what it does. I want you to be able to explain why it does, how that helps, how is that a departure from the status quo, and not just a departure that's actually moving the needle for the end user.
So talk us through the journey from there to GitGuardian.
Yeah, so a few more roles in Security Scorecard. That was a long run for me, 7 years to be exact. So from that inside sales leadership role, I moved into alliances. I ended up expanding the remit to include alliances and channel. And then towards the end of my tenure at Scorecard, I moved back into a sales leadership role. So at the time when I left Scorecard, I was running all of sales for the Eastern region, top to bottom.
Very good. And so when did you join GitGuardian?
A whopping 2.5 months ago.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Very fresh.
Very fresh, but very excited. I think for me, again, going back to some of those earlier comments, I need to be deeply passionate, excited, and interested in a product to be good at a sales leadership role for that company. And I think a big part of what drove me to make the change, and a big part of what's so exciting to me now, is it's just a brand new space, right? It's under the cyber umbrella, but it's a totally different vector area of security with a new set of challenges, a new set of buyers. And I think I'm just fascinated by what we do right now. And it's been quite exciting.
Very good. Now, you mentioned earlier one of the channels that you lean into is around strategic alliances and partnerships. Can you expand on that a bit more? Tell us about why that's a channel that you're so excited about and some successes that you've seen in that space.
Yeah, so I think first order of business is to kind of define what I mean within that category. Because I think, we talk about alliances or partnerships as one size fits all. And I think it's typically a combination of different types of partners. So On one hand, you have your value-added resellers or your traditional resellers. Then you've got your technology alliance partners. These can be behind the scenes or customer-facing partners, meaning you might have an integration with a data provider, and that data powers the platform and introduces new capabilities and makes it better. Your customers won't interact with that partner. They probably won't even have visibility into that partnership. Still an important partnership. And then you have your customer facing tech alliance partners and partnerships. So think about customer uses your tool and another tool together. You build an integration, a better together story, processes and workflows around the two of them. That's another category of partner. And then I'll create a fourth bucket, if you will, just kind of catch all lead generation indoor halo effect partners, which are essentially partners that are putting you at the right place at the right time in terms of who your customer is. And they're partners who have credibility in the eyes of your customers that you can harness by partnering with them, if that makes sense. So, starting from the first category, think about your traditional resellers. I think one of the things that's unique about cyber is cyber tools, when they fail, they create pretty big challenges for businesses. It's not like, hey, MailChimp went down, no offense to MailChimp, and I failed to send 100 emails to 100 top of funnel prospects. I'm not saying that's a good thing, but your business is not going to disappear tomorrow because that happened. Cyber products are different because we're protecting the crown jewels. I mean, if a product fails, it could lead to an event that ends a business. So the downside or the risk associated with poor tool selection is high. And there are a ton of young upstarts entering the business at any point in time. So you've got this dynamic where the channel serves a really important role, plays a really important role in purchasing decisions, and that they almost serve as a vetting vehicle, right? Like the big partners are not going to resell you unless they've validated you and believe in you. In the same breath, the customers of those partners assume that's being done. So when they present a solution, they're more willing to consider it. So, I think the channel is critical in cyber for those reasons: the credibility, the halo effect, the validation layer. And then also, look, if you're working for a startup, I'm going to go ahead and assume that if you had more resources, you'd probably have more sellers. So you're always looking for ways to scale and amplify your reach. And, if you can go have a team of 10 sellers who can go work with 5 partners who have 20 sellers and 100 accounts, and you do a good job of enabling and connecting with the partners, if you make sure you treat the partner as if they're your most important customer, because that's how you get the benefits of the reach, then the channel also serves as a really powerful amplification vehicle.
We've recently launched our 2025 benchmark report, and we did a whole piece around the impact of partnerships on win rates. And the community will not be surprised to hear that that it's the source or the channel with the highest conversion rates, because of the credibility that they bring to the table. And I think there's so many different ways of thinking about that channel around partnerships. But from what we're seeing in the data, less than a third of businesses have a structured partner channel set up. It's not a quick fix. I think in our business, it took 18 months before we got our first deal through a partner, but now a third of our business comes through the partner channel.
It's not a quick fix, and half measures don't work. And I think the best way to assess if a channel strategy is actually working with an organization is do a little survey. Go around, ask a couple reps, ask a couple members of the leadership team how they view channel margin. If most of them are responding to it to the question with it's a cost, it's part of our cost to acquire, this channel's not working there, right? Because if we're going to treat it as a cost, you're going to always try to minimize costs, right? Because that's how we boost our bottom line. Minimizing cost in this scenario chokes off the opportunity before it has an opportunity to take flight, right? So, the right answer to that question is it's an investment, right? That will help us scale. So that's an interesting way to kind of validate or verify if channels being done the right way. The other comment I'll make too on the channel is it's not an original statement. I was having a conversation with one of my strong rep contacts at one of our primary resellers, and I asked him, how do you think about what you do? And his comment was, here at insert name of reseller, who I'm not going to name, we think of ourselves as asset managers. Okay, what do you mean? Our clients will give us a finite amount of money that they want to spend on cyber. It's up to us to tell them what categories of tool and what providers within those tools make sense for them, right? Our customers look to us as someone who sees around the corner for them, right? If I'm in finance, I need to be aware of what's coming down the pipe in terms of regulations that are impacting financial services companies. And I need to understand what combinations of tools and services my customers can put in place in order to satisfy that regulation. So when it's done right, it's almost like they're an extension of a strategic extension of like the CISO office, the way I see it.
We'll return to the episode in a moment. This podcast is brought to you by Ebsta. We are the only revenue intelligence platform with 3 brand guarantees. We guarantee to improve seller performance in the first 6 months. We guarantee to increase forecast accuracy to plus or minus 10% inside 6 months, and we guarantee to get you live within 30 days so you can influence this quarter's number. For more information, visit ebsta.com. Now, back to Revenue Insights.
I think all of the commercial heads in most organizations have a responsibility to have that approach. If you can be an extension, a subject matter expert for your customer, it doesn't matter what you're selling. If you sell, HR software, the chances are the person you're selling to hasn't bought HR software hundreds of times before. And they don't know the gotchas. They don't understand what the different things they should be assessing are. And they're doing the best job they can. And I think if we can transition our sellers to being those expert advisors, where they're actually pushing back on the customer going, look, tell me about the other 7 projects you've got on right now, because maybe replacing your HR platform isn't the priority right now. I can talk to you about the benefits of it, and I can tell you about the gotchas you should consider when you're comparing us to our peers. But let's make sure this is the right time for you. And if it's not, that's fine. But when you're ready, I want you to know that I'm the expert you can lean into.
100%.
I think that applies across the board. So, and that's the night and day transition we see when we look at the data. We spend a lot of time analyzing what top performers are doing differently to B and C players, and we see consistently this approach to being this subject matter expert, the expert advisor to your customer, is the difference between a top performer being able to pick up the phone and the customer being quite happy to take their call because every time they engage, they get value, versus an annoying salesperson that every time they call, they just get feature bashed, and they just don't. They want to run their process on their own. So for me, that's half the battle. And even in 2025, we live in a world where, in fact, even more importantly now than ever before, relationships absolutely drive revenue.
100%. And relationships are built on trust too. And trust is earned by the demonstrated history of showing value and proving that you are looking out for the customer and their outcome, right? I mean, there's a very big difference between a value-oriented touch and hey, let me talk to you about features touch, right? And that's what we're talking about here.
And the answer is not connecting with the individual about the sports team they support or about the weather. That's all well and good, but then that's not going to move the bar. It's not going to be the thing that means that they're going to want to take your next call. It really needs to. You can have nothing in common with your customer, but they can still see you as an expert advisor they can lean into, and it's so important that we really focus in on that piece of the puzzle.
100%, and that's not to say that the small talk that you're alluding to is unimportant, right? Because I think in a lot of situations, you won't have the opportunity to have the type of conversation where you demonstrate value until that individual lets their guard down, lets you in, is willing to have that conversation. And, yes, you and I liking the same sports team has nothing to do with what I really want to talk to you about, but it's that common ground that I think, just the way a human being works, that opens up that next level of conversation where you could truly show your value.
Oh, absolutely, and I buy into that. But you can't have A without B, right? We have to be able to then go on to demonstrate that value and show them why they should bother speaking with us.
Especially if you guys, the sports team in common is not a good one, because then you're going to have nothing positive to talk about anyway.
Yeah, well, I live in that world because I'm a Spurs fan, so there you go. Okay, so look, my next question is really around what KPIs you're using to measure success of the channel and alliances and partnerships. So not every partner is going to lead to goals. So how do you measure that activity, and how do you start investing in partners that perhaps aren't giving us a return?
I think in a lot of respects, if we're focusing more so on the channel, the resellers, it's a give to get model, right? So when picking the KPIs to measure the success of the partner, I think it's important to focus on two types of KPIs. The first type of KPI is how you're engaging with them. And kind of the goal of that KPI is to help you understand, have you done enough of the give to get, right? Because if we don't focus on that part and we just focus on the return, we might erroneously write off a partner who's not producing results and come to the conclusion that they're not producing results because they're the wrong partner. When the reality of the situation is we never engaged with them in the right way to enable them to be the right partner, right? So I think the primary KPIs I'm focused on are, my goal in running a channel sales organization is always going to be to have 100% channel sales, knowing that it's not a realistic goal. I'm still going to have it as the goal, and everything we do is going to be in the interest of getting there, even though I know we'll probably come up short. So for me, I'm looking at what percentage of my pipeline is unpartnered. I am trying to manage that number down as low as possible. I am also looking at the stage in which the partner was attached to the opportunity, because partners don't want to just be brought in at the 1 yard line to transact, because then their value prop is commoditized, which means that there's always going to be someone who's going to do it for less margin. That's not a good feeling for them as well. They want to earn their money, because by earning their money, they demonstrate their value to help wall out competition. So I don't want to see, so the idea there is you engage with partners early and often. So if I see that I want to see a low amount of unpartnered pipeline, and I want to see that most partners are being attached to a deal just after discovery. Those are like the two kind of revenue oriented metrics that I'm focusing on to make sure I'm engaging in the right way. The other metrics I'm looking at are, it depends what you have available to you, but ideally you have some type of partner oriented certification program. So I'm focused on percent of partner sellers who are engaging the content. If there's a certification tied to it, I want to see the percent of individuals that are certified. I want to make sure at a high level that they understand us and that they've made investments to understand us, right? Because willingness is a really important the equation as well. And that I'm feeding them the right way. If those two things happen, right, then I'm looking at the receive KPI, right? The gold standard here is, or the thing that we all shoot for is partner source revenue, right? The deal registration. So I'm looking at deal registration compared to partner utilization, which is just, the portion of deals that I'm attaching them to. And I'm looking for what I think is a healthy return ratio, right? If I am sending 2 million in opportunities to a partner and bring them in a fulfillment or teaming capacity, I probably want to see, 50 at the high end. Probably, I think a 25% return is a little bit lofty, but somewhere between that 20 and 25% returned in deal registration. And then I also, continuing down the path, would love a positive delta between ASP sales cycle for the partner source deal versus ASP and sales cycle for the one that I or my team sourced and brought to them. Because again, big part of the reason we engage with partners in the channel is, remember, they sell to these customers for a living, right? It's not their first time dealing with that procurement person or that legal team, right? They understand it. So because of all the reps and experience they have, you want to see them being able to accelerate and expand things, right? So ideally, if they have the type of access and influence that they should have, you would probably see a discrepancy between ASP and sales cycle on partner sourced versus partner teaming and partner fulfilled.
That makes a lot of sense. The data that we analysed last year, we saw not only were the win rates higher from the channel, but also the velocity, the time it took to close those deals was 30% shorter if it came through channel.
Which makes sense.
Which makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Do you think the partner has a responsibility or can be leaned into also once they've signed, once you've got that customer? So on the right hand side of the bow tie, how do you lean into the channel for supporting the customers once they're a customer when it comes to onboarding, activation, but also renewals, cross-sell, upsells? Do you still see that the channel partners have a role to play there as well?
100%. I mean, at the most basic level, they 100% have the same financial incentives that you do, right? If your deal doesn't renew, their margin doesn't renew. If your deal doesn't expand, their margin doesn't expand. So we have all the same financial incentives. And for the same reason that their intelligence, access, and influence is critical in the pre-sales process, it's equally as important in the post-sales process, right? You know, if you think about the reasons why a customer could churn outside of your products not working, budget cuts, reorgs, new names or faces coming in with different budgets. These are the types of things that the right partner should have visibility into. And that visibility is critical into guiding how you engage with the customer. If your champion is on his way out, or, she's been moved into a different department, or someone new is coming in above in her or him, you have a new person you need to go multi-thread with, right? We're the ones who can tell you that. They're the ones who can introduce you to that person, and they serve as an ongoing compass within the organization you're selling to. I think that's probably the best way to think about it.
No, I like that a lot. That makes a lot of sense. We also saw that if you can, there's a number of points where activating that partner can really have a positive influence, in particular after that initial deal is done. You both monetized a particular customer. There's a great opportunity to lean in, and if you do it right, you might see 2 or 3 other opportunities come about very, very quickly.
Like, think about the hypothetical, right? It's a heavily engaged partner, and they learn about a new budget becoming available, or a tool that was previously going to renew. It's not going to renew anymore. As a result, there's new funds available. Like, the fact that they would even have visibility into that and then kind of steer you to having a cross-sell, upsell conversation to try to capitalize on that new budget that's available, that's valuable.
Absolutely. And the number of times we've had, we've obviously leaned into the partner channel, and we'll just have regular catch-ups with different stakeholders within the partner. And the number of times, you're on a call with them and you kind of refresh their memory on the latest thing or feature that we've got, or whatever's going on, or perhaps what we're doing for one of their other customers. And you'll see a light bulb moment, and they'll go, "Oh, actually, I've got another customer I should introduce you to." Again, in the same way, what we talked about earlier, maintaining those relationships with the key stakeholders and the partners is just so important. I was looking at some data earlier around the revenue an individual partner manager can be responsible for. So while an individual contributor might have a $1 million target for the year, it's not unusual to see a partner manager being responsible for generating 4, 5, 6 times that number.
100%.
And so, have you got any understanding of, or from your past, can you give us any sort of understanding as to what those, what kind of goals you set for someone responsible for nothing but managing that channel?
Yeah, so I think that's going to be a function of the support model in place too. Like, let's say hypothetically, every rep in the company has $1 million quota, right? And if this partner manager is responsible for supporting 5 reps, that means they indirectly have responsibility over a $5 million number, right? So, if we've established that we want to see 75% utilization, across, then you're going to take 75% of 5 million. That's your utilization target. If we assume that you're going to get 25% in return for every $1 of utilization, then we take that number and then we take a fourth of that. And that's what we want to see in sourced. I mean, it's just an exercise in formulas.
And how do you go about incentivizing the person responsible for the partnerships in the business?
I mean, so the numbers I was just running through, that's how we back into essentially what their quotas are, right? So you would have a utilization dollar quota, you'd have a source dollar quota. Most of the time you see those targets representing half of the variable comp, right? So 50% of your variables tied to utilization.
And for those listening in, give us an explanation of what we mean by utilization.
Sorry. Yeah. So utilization means the deal was done through the partner, right? So technically speaking, utilization also encapsulates source, because obviously a deal that's brought to you by the partner is going to be done through the partner. But utilization as a catch-all encapsulates the other 2 buckets. So you have teaming, right? Which means we initiated it, we the vendor, and brought the partner in shortly after to co-sell with us. You have fulfillment. I don't like fulfillment because I don't think that makes sense for anyone. Fulfillment is when vendor gets the deal to the 10-yard line, the 5-yard line, pick your football analogy, then the partner is brought in to help facilitate procurement, right? So it's really just their paper. And then there's sourcing, which is deal registration, partners brought in from the beginning. Now, some people programs will let you register a teaming deal. So don't get confused in that scenario. You can have a deal registration that wasn't sourced. So it's really just depends. Actually, let's back off that. I feel like that was confusing.
We're going to end up down a rabbit hole in there. Okay, let's ask a different question if I may. So anyone who's spent time in a business where the partner channel is material, we inevitably have scenarios where we have a challenging situation between the direct sales team and the channel. So tell us about how you dealt with those challenges and kind of move them out the way rather than becoming big blockers.
And so if we're talking about potential friction between the channel team, like the resale channel team and the selling team, I think there are a few ways in which you can deconflict at the comp plan level. So ideally, you have comp neutrality, right? Which means that the business is responsible for covering the margin that's paid off to the partner. So if the deal was transferred to the partner at 85 and the deal sells at 100, if you have comp neutrality, the business could potentially commission you on the full 100. Maybe that you're probably only going to retire 85 against the quota because you got to think about the ramifications for artificially getting into accelerators. But neutrality obviously removes a lot of the friction with working with the channel because most good sellers are coin operated and they want to keep every coin. Those margin coins are important. So that's one way in which to deconflict. The other source of conflict that I see a lot in the channel is actually between the partners that you work with, in that you might have multiple partners that have paper with your customer. How do you figure out who to leverage, right? I mean, look, obviously, if the deal was sourced, it's whatever partner got you the meeting is the one you go with. If it wasn't sourced, you can have a bit of a challenge on your hands. And I think it's going to be an individualized decision based on the customer, based on your relationship with the partner. Obviously, if you're choosing between a high value partner and a lower value partner, you put your egg in the high value partner basket. But I think this scenario also brings me to another important point, which is I'm a big proponent of what I call the focus partner model, meaning I would much rather see business work with 2 to 3, maybe 4 or 5, whatever the number is, highly relevant partners versus trying to work with every partner out there. Because in order to move the needle with a partner, to be relevant to them, to drive the deal registration that we're all looking to see, the sourcing, we need to be revenue relevant. And what revenue relevant, it can mean a couple of different things. It can mean, one, we're driving a certain volume of revenue for them every year, meaning we make them a lot of money. Another form of revenue relevancy is we've shown extreme growth year over year in terms of the revenue we're driving for them. So we're clearly leaning in. Or there's the halo effect version of revenue relevancy, which means that we are a tool that maybe they could wrap a service around in order to generate some additional revenues, or maybe we're a tool that integrates with other solutions they sell, which means they can combine the two for a higher price ticket and reduce the likelihood of churn, because I would assume that if 2 solutions are integrated, the likelihood you're going to rip one out is lower. Those are reasons to focus on fewer partners and have a focused partner model. And tying it back, if you have a focused partner model, the likelihood that you have conflict between partners is lower.
No, I absolutely buy into that. And we've all invested time and energy in partners that never yielded results. And I think focusing on the right ones and really knowing what makes a good partner and really qualifying them out in the same way we do in the sales process makes a lot of sense. Alex, listen, thank you so much for joining us today. I've really enjoyed the conversation, and I think everyone's got a real interesting education around that partnership ecosystem, and I can't wait to see the future of where that's going. I think more and more is going to come through the channel. So if you're not already investing in partnerships, you absolutely should be. But thank you so much for engaging today. If people want to get in touch with you, Alex, how do they go about doing that?
Yeah, so connect with me on LinkedIn. That's probably the best way to find me. And do me a favor, mention the podcast as well, so I'll know what this is about. Yeah, I look forward to the conversations.
Very good. Thanks again for all your support, Alex, and for joining us today.
Thank you, Guy.
Take care.
Thanks for listening to Revenue Insights from Ebsta. If you want to learn more from some of the brightest minds on how to predictably and efficiently grow revenue, then subscribe to our newsletter. We'll deliver actionable insights straight to your inbox. Go to ebsta.com/newsletter. See you soon.